Hi, I'm back with another demo of my quest to computerize the Europa system. Lately, I've been working on Italy 44, which is the campaign in the Italian peninsula starting May of 1944, going potentially to the end of the war in the Alps in 1945. But I'm also always pondering and working on different aspects of a super mega everything but the kitchen sink grand Europa kind of thing. And because this is computerized stuff, it's not just a matter of recreating the game systems for movement and combat and overruns and that sort of thing. We also have the ability to add some extra bits and pieces to support what we're doing in a computerized environment. So rather than talking specifically about Italy 44, although that's what we're looking at on screen, I thought I would talk about a few of the new and not so new features that go along with playing on a computer that you can't do with paper and cardboard. So what we're looking at is the May setup for Italy 44, and we could start playing it right now and not worry about any of these things that we're going to do. They would just happen in the course of play, and if you wanted to deal with them, you could deal with them, and if you didn't want to deal with them, you don't have to deal with them. But let's take a look at some of these things. The first one is up here in the area that I reserve for different functions that are required for designing, developing scenarios, importing OBs, dealing with terrain that goes into hexes and so forth. One of the older features here is this list option. It's a table of units and values. And when I click on that, and players can click on it as well, although it might not really be too exciting for them, this shows me a list of all the units that have been included in the game, and I can sort it in different ways. And it helps me to look at all these units to make sure that I got the data right in terms of, did I make a typo in the name? Did I get the attack factors correct, the defense factors correct, armor effects, and all that sort of thing. Whether anyone ever needs to see that or not, doesn't matter. Don't have to look at it. Might be useful, but it's just something that I use for developmental purposes. Now, probably more entertaining for players is a different way of looking at kind of information, more of a, a statistical approach. It's information about strength, numbers, data of what the units have going, what the players have going on with their units on the map at any given time. And because this Italy 44 scenario as it's set up right now is just starting, not many things have happened. For example, there are not many units in the replacement pool and so forth. But if we give this a click, and players can do this at any time, let me expand this a little bit. It pops up this window with all the statistics. And so we can see items broken down by values for Axis and values for allies, number of combat units on the map, attack factors on the map, defense factors on the map, REs on the maps, forts, eliminated units, which really means replacement pool. If using my optional experimental but kind of cool, at least in my opinion, supply module, you can look at supply depots and supply points in depots and that sort of thing. You can see information about air forces, naval forces, rail transport, commandos, and that sort of thing. Again, there's no particular reason to look at this. It's just kind of interesting, easy to do in a computerized version as opposed to paper and cardboard. So, and of course, if you're playing with limited intelligence, then you might not want players looking at this. It might give away too much information. I don't know. Okay, so like I say, we're ready to go with the scenario. We're not actually going to play it out, but what I've done is I have pulled over the British 4th Infantry Division into this hex just so I'd have something to play with, something to demonstrate how some of this stuff works. So one of the first things that you'll notice here is, as we've seen many times before in other demos, mousing over a unit brings up some abbreviated information about what's going in that hex. That is, information specific to the hex itself and information specific to the units in that hex. So if we run along here, you can get an idea that we can quickly see all these things. We can also see information for the enemy, and unless we have limited intelligence switched on, which obviously we don't at this point. When we look at that, that's pretty good for when you're just moving along and you want to check something quickly. You can see it, it makes sense, but there is, of course, a lot more going on with each one of those units. So let's select this headquarters, which has just one unit in it right now, and that's the British 4th Infantry Division that I stuck over there for demo purposes. And we have a couple of things going on here. We have near the top, we have the text version of what's in the hex, the British 4th Infantry Division. And if we mouse over the text for that, we get a little pop-up screen that delivers even more information than we previously saw over here. We see quite a bit more information, in fact. And it tells you some specific things about nationality, the size. Yeah, it's a division. Does it have a zone of control? Yes. It stacks like a division. It's 3 REs. It's fully supported and supporting. It has heavy equipment and so on. That can be pretty useful stuff because sometimes it's easy to forget that when you're playing with paper and cardboard, you need to know that information. You need to have memorized all the parameters, all the specific data for each unit on the map. So when you're shoving around cardboard counters and you've got to know, okay, it stacks this way. Does it have heavy equipment or not? And of course, you can look it up, but if you haven't memorized what's going on and how it works, it can be a real pain in the neck to go back and look it up every time you have to figure out, oh, how many REs is this unit, and does that unit have heavy equipment? Here, if you need to know that, you can look it up very quickly, keeping in mind that the system is going to prompt you anyway if you try to do something that's not allowed because your unit has too many REs, or it doesn't have support, or it does have heavy equipment or whatever. The system is going to take care of that for you. But if you want to look it up, you can easily do it here. Notice at the bottom of that pop-up, there's the unit activity line, and that tells you what has this unit done so far this turn. Well, it hasn't done anything yet. It's still sitting in its start hex there. All right, so we'll let that slide for a moment. And so we saw kind of minimum information, medium information, and if we give this a click, it brings up even more information. And I've shown this before. This is really built for diagnostic purposes when I'm working on the game, and it's just a data dump. It's everything, or darn near everything, that the system knows about this specific unit based on the internal ID that the system is using. In this case, 5015 is the internal ID for this unit, and it tells you all these things, and players don't really need to know most of this. I mean, for heaven's sake, I included what is the character in the Europa font that's used to generate the symbol for an infantry unit. Players don't really need to know that, but if they want to look at it, it doesn't hurt to click on it. So there's information about the unit, about the headquarters that holds the unit, information about the hex, about the hex sides, and so on. Kind of all under the hood stuff. Probably no need to look at it, but if you want to, you can. So we've gone from a little bit of information to more information to a whole lot of information. Okay, so now we've seen that, and we know how players can find out information about the units in case they haven't memorized all that kind of stuff. If they don't happen to know that, oh yeah, British divisions are 3 REs. Well, you probably know that, but if you have to look it up, there it is. So we know how to do that now. Let's add a little bit more to it. So I've got this British 4th Infantry Division sitting here, and we can do a couple things with it just for the heck of it. Not that this makes sense, but just to demonstrate how it works. We'll move into this hex, and we'll say, let's do something exciting. Well, something exciting in this case might be to go over here to construction, repair, and demolition. So the capabilities of the 4th Infantry Division are now going to show up. We'll give it a click. If this division had construction abilities, there would be some other options available here, but it can't really do any construction. But it can do demolition. There's no airfield here to destroy. There's no port capacity here to destroy. But hey, we can break a rail line. That sounds very exciting. So let's break a rail line. Not that we would really want to do it in our own territory, just for demo purposes. So we break it, and it tells you, yeah, you did that successfully. And now that rail line is broken. So what else can we do with that division that'll make sense for some of the stuff that I want to demo here? Let's do operational rail movement. So we'll give this a click, and you see all of a sudden we can't click that anymore. Why can't we click operational rail movement for this unit? Well, it's because it's sitting in a hex where the rail line is broken. So we'll move out of here. We'll try it again. Now we can switch over to operational rail movement, and we can also see, by the way, that this is showing there's a rail break there. So if we tried to do rail movement through that hex, it wouldn't let us. So that mark is just an alert that, hey, no rail movement through here, buddy. It only shows up when we're in rail movement mode. If we're just in regular ground unit mode, there's no sense in showing it. So, and then we'll rail on up to there. Okay, so what does that do for the data that we've been looking at? If we hover the mouse over the text here, we can look at the bottom where it says unit activity, and now we can see some things have added there. Sure, we started in hex 4317, then we broke the rail in hex 4217, then we entrained in 4118, and oh yeah, we are currently entrained. Now, as you're moving this unit, you're probably keeping that stuff in mind. And you know, oh, sure, I just did that. I remember I just did that. But if we deselect the unit and we go over here and we do a bunch of stuff, blah, 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 and I'm thinking, oh, now I got to come back over here. You know, I could really use this unit over here. What's going on with this unit? And I can check it out and say, oh yeah, he's entrained. He moved by rail into that hex, and oh look, he broke that rail hex while we were at it. So that gives me an idea what's going on, and if I wanted to change what the unit has done, and I say, oh, I want to go back and do something else with him. Well, this would remind me that, well, yeah, but then, maybe it was really important to break that rail hex. And if you undo the move, you want to start the move over, then that rail hex will no longer be broken. I know when I play with paper and cardboard, and I'm sure this is true of other people as well, if I ever want to undo a move, I say, I want backsies. I want to take this unit back and do something else with it. I might forget stuff that I did along the line. I might forget that, oh yeah, he broke the rail line there. And even though I take the unit back and start over and do something else with it, the rail break might remain. Well, the system knows better than that. If I go up here and cancel the move, it will take away that rail break, and it will also reimburse whatever rail cap was spent for this unit to move, so that rail cap becomes available again for somebody else to move, and it'll plop him back down in the hex where he started, exactly as if nothing had ever happened. And then I can do something else with that unit if I want to. So that's one of the benefits of having all this information here. It's not just the relative static information for the unit, but it's also the dynamic information that changes as the unit does various things during the course of the player turn. So it used to be that the listing of units, in this case there's only one in the hex. Let's come over here. We'll deselect him. I'm not sure what's in here, but we'll take a look. Good, there's a bunch of stuff. It used to be that it was just textual list of units, and you could still have your pop-up here, and you could click the link to see the full diagnostic. I decided to add the visuals down here because I think players are more accustomed to seeing the symbols with the factors below it and this size indicator on the top of the box and all that sort of thing. So all this really does is it recapitulates what's already up here, but in a more visual fashion. And going along with that, in the same way that we can put the cursor over there and see the pop-up, well, I can come down here and put the cursor over it and see the same pop-up in the same way that I could click on the link here to see that full diagnostic come up in a separate window. Likewise, I could click here to see the full diagnostic come up in another window. So that should give you an idea of what kind of information is readily available. You don't have to go back to the rule book to see, does this unit have heavy equipment or not? Does this unit have AA capability, and if so, how many points? Because a lot of units have AA capability that's not marked on the units, and you'll have to know it, you'll have to memorize that, or you'll have to go look it up all the time if you're playing with paper and cardboard, whereas in the computer, it's easy to show that, easy to find out pretty fast. So let's take kind of a left-hand turn here into something that might seem a little bit unusual because you can't really do this with paper and cardboard, but I added an option which is cleverly hidden up here with the CL marker that will allow players to clone units. Clone units, why would you want to clone units in an Europa game? Well, I think just about every player I have ever known has always wanted to make some kind of changes, to invent scenarios, or to say, oh, what happened if I added another division over here? What happened if this Panzer Corps that was on the Western Front had actually been transferred to the Russian front? That sort of thing. So with paper and cardboard, you can either make your own counters or you can dig them out from another game, and you can do all those kinds of things. Now, in the computerized scenarios, you don't quite have the ability to go get a counter from another game, but you can clone counters. If you say, hey, I want to see what happens if I have an extra British infantry division in Italy in May of 1944. Now, I don't really think that's going to make much difference, but just as an example, I will click here on the clone option. This is not quite as user-friendly as some of the other interfaces because I really put it up for my own design and development to begin with, but it's still very useful. Now, I happen to know that British 4th Infantry Division, the underlying code is 5015, and as we saw a moment ago, if you don't know that, you can click on the diagnostic and it tells you what it is. So we'll put in 5015 so we can clone that British 4th Infantry Division. If we wanted to add a hex ID, we could clone so that the new unit appears in a specified hex. Otherwise, it's going to appear in the same hex as the unit that's being cloned. So we'll say okay. Oh, I'm going to cancel this. Let me just change this a little bit. I'm going to cancel that. Let's get back over here to this guy. And now we'll go back in here again. It doesn't really matter. I think it looks better if I do it this way. So we'll now clone it, and we'll say okay. It tells us that it worked. We did successfully clone it. And here we go. Now, in that hex where the original 4th Infantry Division is, we also have the new 4th Infantry Division. And new is just kind of a prefix that I add in there to show, well, this is the cloned version of the original, so you can tell them apart. So you can clone any unit that you want, and you can clone it into any hex that you want it to be into, either the same hex where the original was or an entirely different hex. And furthermore, you can edit the unit. Now you can edit the original, or you can edit the clone, or you can edit both. You can edit anything you want, because again, I don't think I've ever known a player who didn't say, oh, yeah, I think this unit is underrated, or I think this unit is overrated. I wish I could change it. Well, here you can change it. So let's go into this one. This is our cloned British 4th Infantry Division. And you see we can change the name, we can change the attack factor, the defense factor, the movement factor, the number of regimental equivalents, heavy equipment or not, and that sort of thing. I'll probably be adding more to this. I think I'll probably add armor effects, AA value, and a few other things could probably be, it would be worthwhile to add those. But for the moment, let's just go in and say we're going to call this, the new unit will be the 400 Guards Infantry Division. Yeah. So we'll save that. Tells us that it was successfully updated. And now when we look here, we have the 400 Guards Infantry Division. So you might be shaking your head and saying, well, that's kind of silly. I don't ever want to clone units. I don't ever want to change the value of units. That would be too terribly ahistorical. I don't like that idea. Well, you don't have to do it. There's nothing anywhere that says you need to do that, just like you never need to look at the diagnostics unless for some reason you want to do it. But the option does become available. If you want to change the orders of battle, if you want to change the strengths of unit, now you can do it without any problem. By the way, one more thing to show here real quick is that when we look at the original, we can see that it broke the rail line and it entrained, and it's currently entrained, whereas we look at the cloned version of it, we look at the activity at the bottom, none of that is true because this is a fresh, pristine clone that has not done any of those things. And so that's what happens when you clone it. You don't get a clone that says, oh yeah, I also broke a rail line and I also got entrained. You just get a fresh copy of the unit. So you can do it at any time, either at the beginning of the turn or later after the unit that's being cloned has done some stuff. So that's about it. I don't know how terribly entrancing any of that is for anybody, but there's just a few of the features that I've added to the computerized play of Europa that's not really available, or at least not available easily when playing with paper and cardboard. Some of that stuff has been around for a while. Some of that stuff is pretty new, but I thought I'd put it all together for the demo using Italy 44 as an example. And speaking of Italy 44, I think I'm pretty close. I got to get that thing finished. I think I'm pretty close to finishing it. So with any luck at all, the next demo that I will do will be showing at least the first few turns of Italy 44, and we can see what it looks like when we try to crack the German lines, take Monte Cassino, capture Rome, and rush north into the Alps before the Germans can form a new line in northern Italy. Can they do it? Can't they do it? I don't know. Stay tuned, and we'll do this again soon. Thanks for watching.